information as of today. Also on my website, thanks to the efforts of Keith Rowland, who sweated the day through with Richard Hoagland and his people to get this information up to the website. So those of you with computers, those of you who want real audio for the program internationally or wherever, my web address is www.artbell.com. And you do well to head up there right now, because a lot of what you're about to hear about will be up there documented for you, including a newspaper article that'll rock you back, and more news about the web coming up. All of that with Richard Hoagland, science advisor to Walter Cronkite, Engstrom Science Award winner, and at one time a consultant to NASA. I'm not sure they roll the red carpet out there for him anymore. But he did consult for them, and he'll be consulting with you here in just a very few moments. Number one, when I get done with the show tonight, I will hop on board an aircraft and make my way to Portland, Oregon. Saturday is the only book signing I'm ever going to do. Mass book signing. It's going to be at the Oregon Convention Center at high noon. High noon. I'll be there at high noon. And for about 6 hours, I'll sign anything you want me to, really. If you've already got a copy of the book, bring it along. I'll sign it. If you want to buy a copy of the book there, arrive early, would be my advice. So there you have it. The Oregon Convention Center, Portland, Oregon, 12 noon, Saturday. And I'll be getting on an airplane right after the program, virtually. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. Oregon Convention Center, 2 tall spirals. Actually, somebody sent me something about directions. Here it is. Art, just in case someone gets lost in Portland, I thought you better give out the exact address of the Oregon Convention Center tonight. Here it is, 777 Northeast Martin Luther King Boulevard, located on the east side of the Willamette River. And at the east end of the, I hope I didn't slaughter that name, the Steel Bridge. The I-5 freeway runs right past the back of the Convention Center building. All you're going to do is look for the twin greenish glass towers with what looks like flagpoles on top, with red airplane warning lights on top of the poles. The center is on the east side northbound lanes of the freeway. Last night when I called you to impart what Lloyd Center was, shopping center I guess, I experienced brain lock and forgot to mention that if the listeners wanted to try out one of Art Bell's air beds, there's a Sleep Comfort retail center located right there. Oh, really? No kidding. The Lloyd Center Shopping Mall is located about 10 blocks east of the Convention Center. Anyone for a sleep-in? I'm glad you enjoyed my Oregon Kevorkian Center Jonestown diatribe, but it doesn't sound like it's going to shorten the long lines. Oh, well. I've gotten all my affairs in order, and I'm ready to imbibe your magnetically wonderful well water. I will never have enough for everybody who wants well water. He said they should be, the ensemble, jazz ensemble, ought to be playing this theme song of MASH. So that's the Oregon Convention Center, and I'll be there at noon, probably a little bleary-eyed, so I hope you're understanding of that. I will have been up all night doing what I'm about to do here. But it's the one big book signing, and it comes up later today. In a moment, Richard Hoagland with big news. I want to thank the people up at our new sponsor, Shop Smith. They sent me a door harp. It's called a door harp that they made with that machine. And it's beautiful. It's the doggone thing. When you close it, these little balls bounce on some strings, like guitar strings, and it makes this wonderful melody, and it was made with the Mark V, I guess. So thank you, guys. It's beautiful, and we've already got it mounted. That way, I'll tell you, there's a famous saying in China that they told us about when we were up in communist China, and that is, when one goes to use the restroom, the facilities, in China, or Chinese, they don't say that. They're not quite so crass. They say, I'm going to sing a song. And so, appropriately, so a song might be sung, we mounted our new door chime on the bathroom door. The song room. With that, I'll try a segue now to Richard Hoagland. Not easy. He's got some news for you. He's got a press club, press conference coming up. Richard Hoagland, as I told you, is a science advisor to Walter Cronkite, Engstrom Science Award winner, consultant to NASA, and outspoken person now with regard to hyperdimensional physics, and we'll try and get that explained one more time.
Hello, and welcome to the
like that all the time.
Texts exist and they say what they say, except other scholars say, well, yes, there is such a scholars say, well, yes, there is such a text, but this is a myth. And I say, no, it's not a myth. These things really happen. But there's evidence all around us. And I've been traveling, sometimes by myself to research, sometimes with small groups of my fans, to look at the evidence which is spread, as you said, both in the old world and the new world. And I've been just barely 2 months ago in Syria and Lebanon. In Lebanon, there's a place called Baalbek, which anyone can visit. Now it's a little more safer than it used to be. In the Cedar Mountains there, the Sumerian text, call it the landing place. It is a immense structure with an immense stone platform that rises many, many feet, almost 100 meters high, built of colossal stone blocks, some of them weighing well over 1,000 tons each, which someone in antiquity, according to the evidence even before the flood, quarried, picked up, and put in place, stone upon stone, that which stood all the earthquakes and other natural and man-made assaults on the place. And when I was there trying to figure out whether it was really a landing place the way the Sumerians called it, and then just 2 weeks later, I was at Cape Canaveral. The night there was a launch there of the shuttlecraft. I realized that indeed this was a giant stone-made launching pad. If you go to Jerusalem, the so-called newly opened archaeological tunnel along the Western Wall, and I say that Jerusalem served after the flood as mission control center, you also come upon 3 colossal stone blocks weighing almost 600 tons each that somebody again quarried, brought over, and then placed in place, not on the ground, but lifting them and pushing them into place. And that's something, other evidence of pre-diluvial or certainly prehistoric activities by someone that people can see with their own eyes. There's even, a much smaller object. I take pride in achieving a great achievement that the Archaeological Museum in Istanbul in Turkey has kept an object that was discovered 25 years ago that really depicts a one-man spacecraft. And they did not put it on exhibit claiming that it's a fake. I showed them that there is reason to doubt whether it is a fake, maybe it is not a fake, and persuaded them to put it on exhibit so that people could come and judge for themselves. So there's evidence like that all around us. People do not have to devote a lifetime to studying Sumerian or Akkadian or Egyptian hieroglyphics. And I really urge people to go to these various places, to the various museums. In the British Museum, and I give illustrations in my books, there is a round tablet that really depicts the route, the space travel route between Nibiru and our planet, which they call the seventh planet, as anyone would who comes in from the outside into our solar system. So the evidence is all around us, and I mention it, I show illustrations, but people can go and see with their own eyes, and I think this is really the beauty of the fact that they don't really have to rely on me saying this text says this, that text says that. People should really have an open mind and seek or search for the truth by themselves.
Zachariah, is humanity's destiny to become emissaries with a small g?
Absolutely. All the scriptures, if that's the right word to refer to them, say that the last things will be the first things. The first things are the last things. This is stated by all the prophets of the Old Testament. This is repeated in the New Testament book of Revelation. And there's no doubt, and this is part of the answer of this code, that how could prophecy exist unless somebody could refer to records or information of the first things and an indication that this will be repeated. There are cycles, there are repetitions, and not only for events on Earth, or not only the comings and goings every 3,600 years, but cycles like that and repetitions in the universe. And what was done to us, we will go and do to others. This is our destiny.
Well, it's the way it works with parents and children, so I imagine it would work that way between creators with a small g and their creations. I imagine that would be true. Where is your book, Cosmic Code, now available?
Well, it's available in all major bookstores, but there are other things that are not readily available, like the book that I mentioned that records what Father Charlie Moore and others have said, which is of heaven and earth. There are 2 videos of mine, and if people would call, may I?
Yes.
888-519-8481. I'll repeat, 888-519-8481. I think if they actually buy some of the video or this book of heaven and earth, they may even get as a bonus, as a special for my appearance on your talk show, Art, the Cosmic Code for free. So.
Okay, that's the number again is 888-519-8481. Is that correct? Is that right? 888-519-8481.
Yes.
Okay. What you just cited some archaeological evidence, very ancient evidence. What other evidence would you cite? There are many people who say if all this was true, there should have been great amounts of evidence all over the earth, if not above, then below ground.
Well, I mentioned some of the evidence, which people call archaeological evidence, but some I know question it by saying if they were really here, and if they came and went, and if they did this and they did that, where is the screwdriver? This is how we among us say it's the question of the missing screwdriver.
Yes.
But my answer is this: if they had the technology 450,000 years ago to come and go between their planet and our planet, what would be our technology in 450,000 years from now?
Hard to imagine.
Will we still be using screwdrivers? Will we still be using computers based on electronics? Or will we, as the indication is, and I deal with it in my new book, will we use DNA for computing, for retaining and transmitting information? Will we be using metals that rust, or will we use biodegrading materials? So in order to answer or deal with this question, that we seek the evidence based on what we know. I sometimes say, I show an illustration of two astronauts, two Anunnaki, saluting a rocket ship. But I myself, if this were shown to me 50 or 100 years ago, I would say, well, the two beings saluting a very large pencil. And if somebody would say, no, that's a rocket, I would say, what? A rocket? What's a rocket? So we are all, I myself included, we are captives of our technology. When the text described how the Anunnaki had or retained or kept their information on some tiny bits of something, I say, well, it's something like computer chips. But will we use computer chips 500,000 years from now? Will we use, I sometimes say, it is really funny to me, all this search called SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Yes, I interview people.
Not for beings, but for intelligence. Out there, and it's done with the aid of looking for radio waves. And I say, how fortunate we are that the search is done today and not 100 or 200 years ago, because then the search would be for evidence of bonfires. Because isn't that how you signal from one mountain or one place to another? Why not telepathy? Why not laser beams? Why not? I don't know. So just to assume that our technology is the dominant in the universe, it is really, well, I don't want to use any harsh language. It is not reasonable.
Zechariah, who was Jesus? Was Jesus the Son of God with the big G?
Well, I have not dealt yet in my books with this issue, and the question does come up. I've been traveling, I've been addressing large audiences or having interviews on the air, and I feel like that there's a need. I really must deal with this issue, and to me, it is not the question of was a certain person the Son of God, because this really diminishes the subject, or the fact that so many millions venerate this personality, because there were many others. There were Egyptian pharaohs before Jesus who claimed that they are sons of God. Alexander the Great rushed from Macedonia to an oasis in Egypt, and that some say was the real reason for his conquest, in order to verify a rumor that existed in the court of Macedonia that his real father was not King Philip, but was an Egyptian god, the god Thoth. And he went all the way to the oasis of Siwa to consult there an oracle, and said that this was confirmed. So to call somebody the Son of God was really not only nothing new, but was, I think, even degrading. I think the issue is that at that time there was messianic expectation that things would happen, that a contact with the cosmos, with God, with the capital G, is imminent. And I think this is really the issue to face or tackle, which I intend to do, hopefully, in one more book concerning Jesus.
Is it possible, I have something for you to consider, Zechariah, that if we had a sample of the DNA of Jesus, now there are many recorded miracles performed by Jesus, is it possible that if we had a sample of his DNA, that we would find subtle or even large differences in the DNA?
Well, this is a hypothetical question. You may be really making a very important suggestion, because if indeed what is it called in Turin, the Shroud of Turin, contains remainders of the blood of Jesus, then it has the DNA of Jesus.
Yes, that's correct.
And I think that what you have just asked as a question should be made into a very forceful suggestion and something that whoever possesses that shroud, I don't know if it's the Vatican or just a certain church in Italy, in one place, I think that you really raised a tremendous issue and something that ought to be done and not just to be speculated upon.
All right, we have very little time. Of course, east of the Rockies, you're on the air with Zachariah Sitchin. Where are you, please? Where are you, sir?
I'm in Babylon.
Babylon?
Yes, Babylon, Long Island.
Babylon, Long Island, New York. All right.
Sort of appropriate name, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Mr. Sitchin, in your Sumerian writings, where these non-human beings came down and talked to the Sumerians, they mentioned the planets as they telling how the origin of the Earth, how we were knocked out of orbit. Like these planets had a consciousness, and I was just wondering why they would relate the story like that. Is it possible that they believe that planets have a consciousness too?
Well,
intelligence?
No, not consciousness is not the right word, but they did consider those who came to Earth as visitors and taught the Sumerians. They did consider planets as living objects, not as dead bodies, but as something that has its own life cycles and history and origin and a beginning and an end, perhaps. So to them, planets were living organisms, the way the Greeks later on referred to Gaia. And there's a whole discussion, even academic circles, they call the theory of Gaia, that planets are really living organisms.
Well, yes, there are also modern astronomers like Professor Van Flanderen who believe that there is a great deal of energy within all planets, and that suns, in fact, derive their energy from the planets that revolve around them. And that, of course, would answer the question of how Nibiru is able to survive, though it travels far outside the sphere of our sun in a very long cycle. So there are even modern astronomers that I think support a lot of what you say, Zachariah. Listen, we're out of time. See, we're out of time already. we just got started.
Well, I'll come back, Art, I promise.
All right, you really must do that, all right? In the meantime, I wish you all the luck with your new book. Where are you going to be?
Right now, I try to sleep in my own bed for a week or two because I've been invited to speak, and I did speak in Vienna and in Zurich and in Mexico, and I've been all over, and it's time to stay put to celebrate Thanksgiving with my family and welcome the new year.
Good for you, Zachariah. Next time, a longer show, my friend.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
That is Zachariah Sitchin, upon which so many people base their work. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM.
The trip back in time continues with Art Bell hosting Coast to Coast AM. More somewhere in time coming up. From March 25th, 1999.
reason for my absence from the radio, period. But I will only be gone 3 days, and it's something I have to tend to. So there will be some intriguing repeats for you to listen to over the next 3 nights while I take care of some very important stuff. Let's put it that way. And then I'll be back on Monday. As a matter of fact, Monday, Major Ed Dames is going to be here. Cytex Major Ed Dames. And Tuesday, guess who I just booked for Tuesday? You may remember we just finished doing a show on these new majestic documents that are sweeping the country that were supplied by Dr. Robert Wood. Well, the man who gave the documents to Robert Wood, Dr. Wood, is Tim Cooper. And Tim Cooper wrote a fax to me and said, "Hey, Art, I am the researcher who turned over the Can't-Wheel majestic documents to Dr. Wood. There is more to tell. If you're interested, you can contact me at so-and-so." And I didn't waste 2 minutes in picking up the telephone, of course, and making that call. So the man who delivered the documents to Dr. Wood, who would know perhaps where they came from, and has apparently information not even contained in these volumes of documents, will be my guest on Tuesday. But again, let me tell you that in something related to the reason that I left the air in the first place, related to it, I'm going to be gone for the next 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then we'll be back Monday. Having said that, looking at the news, the top news item is Clinton loses key GOP support. He had some, you mean? In fact, I guess several House Republican moderates announced their support for impeachment, prompting the president to weigh advice to make an explicit last-minute confession of wrongdoing to stop the GOP slide. A last-minute confession of wrongdoing. Now that is really interesting, isn't it? A last-minute confession of wrongdoing. This would be how many times now he's done that? And then the second headline is, GOP report seeks Clinton removal. Otherwise, endeavor is back on Earth. Iraq is still screwing around with arms and the inspectors. Nothing new there. A court has ruled that Libya can be sued in the bombing of the downing of Pan Am Flight 103. And that's about it. Now, coming up in a moment, something far more interesting than any of that. Dr. Michio Kaku. He is a professor of theoretical physics at the City College of New York. He is co-founder of the string field theory. Now, I know that sounds like something you can't understand or won't understand or make glaze over your eyes, but trust me on this. You're going to like this. You're going to understand it because he is in it. But really, I think that Dr. Kaku is stepping into the large shoes left by the sad passing, the very, very sad passing of Carl Sagan, which still affects me. I'm so sorry that Carl is gone. He is the author of the critically acclaimed and best-selling Hyperspace, as well as Beyond Einstein, Quantum Field Theory, a modern introduction and introduction to superstrings. He also has his own weekly radio science program that is nationally syndicated. But tonight, he is ours. Here from New York is Dr. Michio Kaku. Dr. Kaku, welcome back. It's been too long.
Yeah, glad to be back on, Art.
Boy, I said it at the beginning of the program, and I made the analogy of you and the late Dr. Carl Sagan, because you both have the ability in your fields uniquely to explain something that normally could never be explained to a regular person, and yet you're able to somehow get them to understand what you're talking about. Where does that ability come from?
Well, I think part of it is that both of us share an enthusiasm. That is, we see the wonders of the universe, and we think that what's out there is so fantastic, so neat, that it really has to be told to as many people as we can possibly reach. And we share that childlike wonder looking at the heavens. For example, 1998 has been a banner year in terms of cosmology and astronomy. And we want to share the fact that in our own Milky Way galaxy, for example, we have now identified a black hole. A black hole right in our own backyard, practically a hop, skip, and a jump away from us.
How much of a hop, skip, and a jump?
Well, it is about 20,000 light years away. So as far as the crow flies, it would take an enormous amount of time for one of our rockets to reach there.
Well, we're never going to get there as the crow flies, are we?
Probably not in our lifetime. However, the other black holes that we've seen in outer space, 12 of them, are like millions of light years away, 30 to 50 million light years away.
Oh, you missed a little bit of what I was saying. I said we'll never get there ever as the crow flies. And what I meant by that is that we're never going to traverse those kinds of distances as the crow flies, or in a straight line. All those light years. One light year taking one Earth year, one human year to traverse at the speed of light. We're not going to do it. However, there may be another way.
That's right. Going at velocities below the speed of light, perhaps the ramjet fusion engine will take us very close to the speed of light. But if you want to break the light barrier, you have to have energies far beyond anything that our puny civilization can harness. And you have to reach what is called the Planck energy, at which point space-time becomes unstable. Now, at the Planck energy, which is 10 to the 19 billion electron volts, holes in space begin to form, we think.
So in other words, you've got to generate the kind of energy that it takes to create a black hole.
In some sense, yes. Black holes can reach that kind of energy, 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. And some of us believe that at the center of a black hole, there could really be a gateway to perhaps another portion of our universe, or perhaps even an anti-universe. We're not sure. But our civilization is too puny, Like I mentioned before on your show, we physicists believe that there are type 1, type 2, type 3 civilizations.
And I have many new affiliates since last time you were on, so let's do the 101 on the different type civilizations there are. We are a what?
Okay, we are on this scale of cosmic energy, type 0. We get our energy from dead plants.
0.
Oil and coal is our source of energy on the planet Earth. But in about 100 years to 200 years, we will attain genuine type 1 status. Maybe. And that is truly planetary energy can be harnessed. A type 1 civilization in space, for example, would have enough energy to play with hurricanes, to play with volcanoes, to create earthquakes. If it's raining on a Sunday picnic, well, hey, gee, we'll just change the rain, that's all. We're not going to bellyache about the hurricanes, we're just going to change the hurricane. That's a type 1 civilization that can harness any kind of energy that is planetary. But then in outer space, we physicists have seriously looked now. We've spent millions of dollars on this now, looking for type 2 and type 3 civilizations. A type 2 civilization would be stellar. They use solar flares for their energy supply. So when, Junior wants to borrow the Starship, Dad says, fine, just put a few white dwarf stars and neutron stars in your gas tank, and off you go. So type 2 civilizations play with the output of a single star.
Well, gee, our little single star, by the way, while we're on a type 2, has been having quite a bit of solar flare activity of late. In fact, it's been downright amazing.
That's That's right. Right now we are, of course, helpless against the 11-year sunspot cycle. And in fact, our astronauts, of course, have to be told ahead of time that they're going into a sunspot cycle. But a Type 2 civilization would simply say, hey, let's turn off the sun for a little bit and make sure that there's no disturbance coming from our sun.
Turn it off?
We'll turn off the energy bursts that come from the sun. And then a Type 3 civilization has exhausted the power of just one star, and they are galactic. The recent Star Trek movie that's out, for example, which is the #1 movie in the country, and that's a Federation of Planets, which is a Type 2 civilization. And Captain Kirk and Captain Jean-Luc Picard basically deal with, just a few planetary systems in a tiny little sector of the galaxy.
And I know who a Type 3 is. Type 3 has got to be Q.
The Borg.
The Borg?
The Borg, right.
Well, what about Q? Q is a virtual god, or is he beyond 3?
He's beyond 3. You see, the Borg eats Type 2 civilizations for breakfast.
Great.
Because they are galactic. They roam across the galaxy, the alpha, the beta, the gamma quadrant, and they pillage wherever they can. And Independence Day with Will Smith is another Type 3 civilization, a very savage type civilization like Locust.
Did you like that movie?
I liked the movie for the special effects. It was really neat watching Los Angeles being blown up.
I thought it was. The reason I liked the movie, and I thought the second half of it, but the first half of it, when they came to the explanation of, we don't want to bargain, we don't want to negotiate, we don't want to talk to you, all we want to do is kill you.
Right,
I thought that was pretty right on.
Yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts. What do you want us to do? Die.
Die.
Right. Well, that's a Type 3 civilization that can roam across different sectors of the galaxy, and they can treat Type 2 civilizations as, lunch, basically. That's what the Borg is all about. If you watch Star Trek Voyager, 5 of 9?
I do it religiously.
Yeah, and that's, so the Federation is a Type 2 battling against a Type 3, the Borg. However, there is something called Type 4, and as you pointed out, Type 4 would have to be beyond galactic. They would have to be able to go between galaxies, and they would essentially have the power of a god at that point. The energy output far beyond the Planck energy. And so space and time is their playground, and that would be the Q. So the Q, for those Star Trek fans that were out there, would be beyond galactic in terms of energy output.
Here's a question that could potentially get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Doctor, is it possible that our creation was the 2-second whim of a Q somewhere?
Yes, there has been some speculation among physicists about that fact, that if a civilization attains Type 4 status, they would have enough computer power to recreate realities of some sort. And they may simply have a supercomputer with a hard disk, and they may simply want to run simulations like we run simulations in our supercomputers. Like in my computer, I can run simulations of colliding black holes, for example. Well, perhaps the Q may put in his super CD-ROM a simulation of our galaxy. In which case, this phone conversation that we're having right now could be simply a simulation in somebody's CD-ROM.
No, so we're nothing but SimCity, the build-up portion of SimCity in somebody's video game.
That's right. There have been several books about this. I find this rather disturbing. I prefer not to believe that I am simply a thought on somebody's hard disk drive.
Well, sure, but if you imagine that there can be a Type 4, a Type Q, I hope there's lots of Star Trek fans, and I trust there are out there, who know who Q is, then you really do have to imagine that as one distinct possibility.
That's right. See, before I thought about the Q and Type 4, I would have thought that this would be ridiculous. But energy is for the taking. You wait long enough, and if you grow at 3% gross national product increase per year, sooner or later you will hit Type 1, Type 2, Type 3. It's inevitable unless you blow yourself up. And then beyond galactic is supergalactic. And at that point, you will have enough computer power to simulate not just colliding black holes, but to simulate whole realities. in which case it could be very disturbing, but it could be that we are in some sense somebody's hard disk drive playing at the present time.
Doctor, when I was 12 years old, I was beginning to get an intense interest in electronics, and I lived at that time in Media, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And down the street from me lived a physicist who was deeply involved. He explained it to me, and I can only explain it to you as he did to me, in trying to get reactions like nuclear reactions from materials other than uranium. That's the work he was doing. What is that theoretically possible? I mean, he would tell me that in the desk in front of you, there is more potential energy if you knew how to unleash it than the world could even handle.
Mm-hmm. That's right. In principle, a tiny bit of matter can be turned into a fabulous amount of energy. That little matter could be uranium, and the energy could be the atomic bomb.
This was a man who got me my chem license. You know, he taught me. He was my mentor, and I have always wondered about that ever since.
Well, if you have antimatter, which, in fact, when I was in high school, I used to play with antimatter, and I photographed antimatter, and I went to the National Science Fair and won grand prize. Manipulating antimatter. If you have large quantities of antimatter, it will annihilate with ordinary matter. And this is not science fiction. We do this every day with our atom smashers in Switzerland and in Chicago, outside Chicago. Then, yeah, even a small piece of rock on your table would be enough to create the energy of 100 hydrogen bombs.
All right.
You can totally annihilate that with antimatter, which is very expensive. It would bankrupt the United States to create antimatter on that scale. But it's doable. It's possible.
It's doable. All right, hold on, doctor. Stay right where you are. As a matter of fact, the man's name, I'm sure he's no longer with us, was Dr. Paul Weiss. And he used to spend afternoons with me teaching me theory and code and electronics and giving me little hints of what he did or the kind of work he was doing. That was his name, Dr. Paul Weiss. I wonder if anybody knows him or remembers him. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM.
This is Career Networks. That was Art Bell hosting Coast to Coast AM. On this, Somewhere in Time.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Art Bell. Dr. Michio Kaku is my guest, and he'll be back in a moment. Back now to Dr. Michio Kaku. Doctor, welcome back.
That's me on again.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to do what is probably going to be the most difficult thing for you, and that is to ask you to explain. You're co-author of the string theory, right?
String field theory.
Super string, is
The
it?
main branches of string theory.
All right. Can you explain that? Make me understand it?
Okay, well, let me try.
All right.
Einstein spent the last 30 years of his life chasing after the theory of everything, an equation 1 inch long that would allow him to, quote, read the mind of God. It was an equation 1 inch long that would unify all the 4 fundamental forces into one coherent equation. It would explain gravity, the electromagnetic force like radio and light. It would explain the weak nuclear force, which governs radioactive decay, and the strong nuclear force, which helps to light up the sun. All that was to be included in one equation into one theory, and he failed. He spent 30 years of his life chasing after this theory of everything, and he blew it. He couldn't do it. Well, today we think we have it. Today we actually have a candidate for the theory of everything.
The theory of everything.
Right, which would allow us to calculate what is called quantum gravity. Quantum gravity is the most exotic, it's the most gorgeous branch in all of physics. Quantum gravity is what dominates the instant of the Big Bang and would explain to us what happened before the Big Bang. Quantum gravity dominates the center of a black hole and would allow us to go through the center of the black hole. So all the interesting phenomenon as to where the universe came from and what happens at the center of a black hole, we have to go to a theory of everything. A theory of everything may eventually give us the ability to go through wormholes, perhaps. This is a question mark, of course. Perhaps to drill a hole in space and to leap across millions of light years in an instant. Perhaps the ability to bend time into a pretzel and to build a time machine. All these are possible if you could solve a theory of everything, a theory of quantum gravity. Now, we think that if you had a super microscope and could look at an electron, you would see not a point, but you would see a vibrating string. And the string, of course, can have many notes on it. You can have, just like a violin string, A, B flat, C sharp, F. No one says that C sharp is more important than F. Everyone says it's just a violin string. That's all it is. Well, we think that that's why there are so many fundamental particles in the universe. How come we have so many darn particles? We have electrons, protons, neutrons, quarks. We have mesons. We have hundreds, thousands of particles. When I got my PhD from Berkeley, I had to memorize about 100 of these damn particle names. And now we realize that they're all perhaps just vibrations of a single object.
Have we actually seen yet a quark?
Well, we have not seen a quark because we think the quark is combined or confined inside a proton with glue. The glue is called gluons, and the gluons condense to hold the quarks together.
And they actually call it gluons?
They become gluons, right. The particle of glue that glues the quarks together are called gluons. And it's called the color force because the quarks come in three colors. And so this is called quantum chromodynamics, and it is it's the theory of the strong interactions. So we now have a understanding as to why we don't see individual quarks, because they're bound together very tightly by these gluons, which hold the quarks together.
Have we seen a gluon?
No, but in our atom smashers, we've smashed protons apart, and in the debris, all the debris is consistent with the quark model. Now, the quark model itself is very ugly. You have so many quarks. They occur in many colors, many flavors, we have many gluons, and still we have so many fundamental particles that we cannot believe that the quarks are fundamental. We now believe that the quarks themselves are nothing but musical notes on this superstring. So when the superstring vibrates one way, you get electricity. When it vibrates another way, you get a quark. When it vibrates another way, it turns into light. When it vibrates another way, it turns into a graviton.
You're virtually saying that everything is vibration.
That's right. Everything is vibration. This is a theory of everything.
Oh, you mean so I actually just nailed it? Everything is vibration.
That's right. And it's vibrations of what? What is vibrating? The little tiny strings. Now, if this is so simple, then how come Nobel Prizes aren't awarded for this theory? How come we don't get telephone calls from Stockholm? And the reason is because the theory predicts that these strings vibrate in 10-dimensional hyperspace. Now, when that result came out, we physicists, our minds were boggled. We thought that this was science fiction. This is not physics. We believe that our universe is 3 dimensions in space and 1 dimension in time. So string theory for many years was laughed at by many physicists.
So then, Doctor, would this field properly be called hyperdimensional physics?
That's right. This is hyperspace. This is the ultimate theory. We think that in hyperspace there is enough room to accommodate all the fundamental interactions. Now, we string theorists have the last laugh. Now, all the major Ivy League schools and the major technical schools are scrambling to hire as many string theorists as they can. Harvard now has hired 2 string theorists.
Really?
Princeton has 3 of them now. Caltech has hired several. They're all Johnny-come-latelys. But they all begin to realize that, hey, this is the only game in town. This could be it. This could be, quote, reading the mind of God. The mind of God could be in hyperspace, in other words, because only in hyperspace do we have enough room to accommodate all four fundamental forces into equations that can be compressed to just a few inches. That's what's fantastic. This is what's causing all the shock waves reverberating through the world of physics. The latest incarnation of string theory is called M theory. If you've been reading the New York Times, you know that.
What is that?
M stands for membranes. We now believe that strings can exist along with membranes in 11 dimensions. So we've now kicked up one more dimension. We're up to 11 now. And the people at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton are the ones pushing M theory really hard. And there must be at least 500 papers now written on M theory. And so string theory is still the same theory, of course. String theory is now the center of gravity in all of physics. If you want to become a theoretical physicist, if you want to follow in the footsteps of Einstein, you have to learn string theory. And my book is the Bible of string theory. It's called Introduction to Superstrings. It's for second and third year PhD students. But my book is essentially the Bible of superstring theory. And it, of course, is wall-to-wall equations. It's not afternoon reading.
I understand.
That's why I wrote the book Hyperspace. I wrote the book Hyperspace so that high school kids can really look at this theory and say, oh my God, this is gorgeous. This is beautiful. This is, quote, the mind of God, as Stephen Hawking likes to say. Stephen Hawking is a very big fan of superstring theory, and he believes that this is it. This could be the theory of everything.
Well, when we split the atom, we figured out how to blow things up in a bigger, better way, and maybe ultimately destroy ourselves totally.
That's right.
If we were to come up with this equation, this theory of everything equation, I bet, like everything else, it would have good and evil uses.
Yes, but the energy at which this theory manifests itself is the energy of creation. It's the energy of a black hole, the energy of a Big Bang. So we are too primitive to play with this theory. When Newton discovered the law of gravity, he could calculate what it would take to jump to the moon.
Right.
The first humans could do that.
Right.
But the answer was you'd have to jump 25,000 miles per hour to reach the moon.
Right.
And what did they have in England in the 1600s? They had horses and carriages that went 5 miles per hour. So he must have cried, realizing that he had a theory, an equation 1 inch long, that would allow him to predict what it would take to manipulate gravity to reach the moon. He couldn't imagine that one day we would have rocket ships. Well, today we physicists feel like Newton. We have a theory of 10 dimensions, which would allow us to manipulate space, allow us to play with space and time, like the cube, perhaps. But we don't have the energy to do that.
Do you actually have the mathematical formula that you believe proves this?
Well, proving it experimentally is extremely difficult because we would have to recreate.
No, theoretically, do you have a one great line of math that theoretically explains this? And if you were able to actually do this, you would truly be able to, as you said, virtually become a god.
The equations so far have not been theoretically solved. No human on the earth is smart enough to solve these equations right now. These equations are well defined. In fact, I wrote many of them myself.
Right.
These equations are well defined. Mathematicians, some of the world's greatest mathematicians, have cracked their heads trying to solve these equations, and they have failed. But I think that within my lifetime, a young physicist will solve these equations and be heralded as the next Einstein and win a Nobel Prize and verify the fact.
Doctor, do you think that it will take a virtual evolution in humankind, or possibly a savant of some sort, to come along and do what Einstein did and take the next step? Or do you think that, as you said, some young physicists will come along and do it?
Well, I think that this theory is the next step. We just can't complete it because this theory was discovered by accident. We were not supposed to see this theory for perhaps another 50 to 100 years. The theory was discovered by accident. No human was smart enough to create this theory.
How did we get it?
It was discovered by accident in 1968. The first inkling of strings came in 1968 when two young postdocs at CERN, Geneva, Switzerland, were flipping through a math book of all things and came across the Euler beta function. And that rocked the foundations of physics when the first indication that there could be simplicity coming from hyperspace rocked the world of theoretical physics. And then the theory died in the 1970s because no one could believe that the mind of God could be in 10 dimensions. But now, like I said before, it's the dominant theory in theoretical physics. If you look at any physics journal, all the big papers on quantum gravity are now dominated by string theory. It's even worked its way into science fiction and comic books now. It's such a powerful theory now. In comic books, they even refer to string theory. And I get all sorts of emails from science fiction writers who want to incorporate string theory into their latest version of how we will go to the stars via wormholes and stuff like that. So it's worked its way into the mainstream now. And in Stephen Hawking's universe, the 6-part series in PBS, I was in part 6. And in part 6, Ed Witten, who's the leader of the field, and myself explained what this theory is. This is probably the greatest theory ever formulated in the history of humankind, the crowning achievement of 2,000 years of work on the nature of matter and space and time. But we were careful to say that it's not finished yet. We can't solve the equations. We're not smart enough yet. We're not clever enough to solve these equations. But if you want to see what these equations look like, you can go to Amazon.com and see references to my book, Introduction to Superstrings, which have all these equations listed for you.
They would definitely be Greek to me, and I suppose most people, but there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who would like to see them.
Yeah, but the physical picture behind it is beautiful. The physical picture of little strings trading musical notes, that our bodies are symphonies of strings, that the harmonies of a string are the laws of physics, that physics can be reduced to the harmony of music. That's a fantastic idea.
It is, and music, of course, is itself mathematical, is it not?
That's right. In fact, the Pythagoreans 2,000 years ago were Greeks who believed that, they figured out the laws of harmony. They thought that the universe must obey these laws of harmony.
Well, let me take you way out on a limb, into metaphysics almost.
Okay.
Are you aware of the work that the Monroe Institute does?
No, but go on.
Dr. Robert Monroe he's now passed on, a proponent of out-of-body travel, and he was able to induce this state in human beings by playing what he called this hemisync music with these vibratory tones behind it, and they would induce a certain state in a person that would allow them to experience something in the metaphysical. Now, it may well be there's a connection between the work he was doing and what you're talking about, because it's all vibratory, and he was talking about other dimensions, and you're talking about